Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Faisel Sayed,
And I'm Dr. Dan McCarter.
and you're listening to Faisel and Friends, where we believe access to primary care is a right, not a privilege.
Today, Faisal and I are talking about healing through trust. Let's dive right in.
Hey Dr. Dan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Faisal. I'm doing good. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Yeah, you know how much I love our conversations. It's not so much that we need better tech to have better health outcomes, as much as we need better analytics to have improved health. Because all these fancy things based on reimbursement, looking for one thing, we can use existing technologies to really advance, create new types of screenings, like especially for the silent killers, like all the silent killers, anything that's labeled as a silent killer, where a patient comes with a chief complaint. Well, what if we had a healthcare delivery system that was not based on the patient's chief complaint? That was a balance between whatever the patient's immediate complaint was for the day versus what the doctor's primary concern was for that patient, based on what they know of the patient's past medical history, family history, all that stuff.
And also then how do you actually customize it for what the patient most wants or most needs? I mean, I was seeing a new patient yesterday that was, I don't know, 79 years old, wanting to talk about getting a colonoscopy. And in the fee for service world, a natural tendency is, well, sure, let's go ahead and do a colonoscopy. And I was like, well, wait a second. I want to see all the old lab, all the old reports, and then the old pathology results, because I've had patients who've gone off for a colonoscopy and they've had the scope stuck through the bowel. And as you get older, that gets more likely to happen. People's skin gets thinner. The same thing
Sure.
happens to the colon wall. So the problem with so many of these preventive things, when people are just start talking about billing, and then it's real simple. Well, if I do this, I get paid this. Not if I do this, we get better outcomes, and therefore we should deploy this strategy on this patient. And how do we adapt to getting the patients what they, what matters to them? What do they want to do? I mean, I talked with him. It didn't sound like he had some fear of dying with colon cancer. So, I mean, I'm not treating some irrational fear here, but how do we take time to think about it and not just act on it right away?
Yeah. So, what you said, the patient's, what's actually in the best interest of the patient. If the doctor's primary objective is to improve health or do what's in the best interests of the patient's health and well being, then the doctor can help the patient see what they cannot see. And that's the struggle that we run into. The doctor's job is not to tell someone like me, hey, you need to switch to a plant based diet right now. And any liquid that's not water, you're not allowed to drink it. That's not doctoring. There's no doctoring over there, right? The or coaching even. Like what we're really looking for more is, identifying, okay, these are my primary concerns as a human being. I'm 43 years old and I've noticed I'm not running as fast as I used to run. I'm not able to bounce back as quickly as I used to be able to bounce back. And I'm worried what's going to come next. Like, how long is this plateau going to last? That's my primary concern. Because although I don't feel terrible, I don't feel as good as I did before. And I just want this to I want to ride this wave for as long as possible before the eventual downturn is going to come. And I don't know how down that's going to be.
Right. Well, and the thing about it is we're not just dealing with patients. It's not like we're just dealing with the organism, right? I mean, I was reading a newsletter this morning and it was talking about taking contextual, uh, um, the patient's context into account. If we've talked, many times, if a patient is homeless, it doesn't make any sense to give them an insulin that has to be refrigerated, right? That's not going to work. But I think it's not like we're just dealing with it's not like in medicine you're truly just dealing with the human organism. You're dealing with the community they live in. Do they live in a community where it's safe to exercise? Do they do they have family support? The Even if my patient wanted to go get a colonoscopy, he lives alone. You'd have to find a driver who would be willing to go sit with him for close to a day to get the colonoscopy, right? And so, I mean, does he have that if we needed to do that? What are people's spiritual beliefs? I mean, do they, I think if you think what we have here on this earth is all there is, then it's different than if you think there's something else on the other side. And I don't want to get into a religious philosophy discussion, but knowing how our patients are thinking about things helps them make decisions about what they may or may not want in a specific healthcare situation.
Well, you mean we as human beings aren't don't make rational decisions 100% of the time?
We never make rational decisions, and the most irrational part is we think we do. We think we're rational when we're really not. Yeah,
So obviously then cultural competency should have more of a weight than it probably does now.
right.
It's not something that you can translate over a phone. You got to understand where your patients are coming from. But in order to understand where your patients are coming from, you need to have the time. The healthcare delivery system must have the time. And so increasing access alone is not enough. That was my biggest frustration in the community health world. Hearing, just with our conversation right now, it's taking me back to a time where I felt I felt like I was doing the right thing by helping this cause so that more people could touch our system, even if it was just a brisk touch. The system, which it felt in my mind, it was a better way. It was a better way to experience the healthcare system rather than experiencing it where many of them were unfortunately experiencing it, which was a hospital. That's where they were experiencing it. But we were only having one or two touches. What kind of an impact can you make with one or two touches? It's like I remember I had 30 or 40% of my patients vaccinated against influenza. And I thought that was pretty good. I remember thinking, gosh, this is awesome. The national average is around 40 or 42%, whatever it was at the time. And I said, boy, with an underserved population, with not even 2 visits per patient per year, patting myself on the back, that's pretty good. Close to the national average. That's pretty good. And then I came here as a primary care doctor, and I remember I had over 60% of a very sick population, much more resistant population, vaccinated against influenza, and I thought that was amazing. It's double what I had, before with a much younger population, what felt like a less hesitant population for sure, and nobody batted an eye. Nobody batted an eye because they're like, oh, there's a doctor in New Orleans who has over 97% of his patients vaccinated. And I said, well, and my response was, I said, well, clearly his patients aren't as difficult as mine, like the typical. I said, clearly there's something else going. I have a very sick patient, but my patients are much more sick than my patients are much more resistant, and then I spoke with that doctor,